some people told me.
Right, and then I totally understand that. I mean, because you can't have 11,000 people that are showing up in your what I want to play list.
Yeah, the worst part was I couldn't just, I would never just decline friend requests. I would have to like write like an apologetic note. With that fucking Xbox controller.
You know, you can do that on Xbox.com right now. You actually can use your keyboard.
I figured that out like 6 months later. I was writing custom notes to each person, and it took a very long time.
So I want to move on to a little segment I want to call Playing D, right? Because part of being a spokesperson, part of being on the front lines is when shit goes wrong, you're the guy who's going to get the questions, and you're the guy who's going to have to somehow be responsible for answering those questions. And that's, I think, when things get trickiest, right? When everything's going great, we always want to talk and hear what's going on. But when something's not working, people then start questioning whether or not people are just being a shill, whether they're really engaging as people. So, Larry, this is you on James's show, right about when the first rash of the Red Ring of Death stuff was going on. I know you love to talk about your favorite topics.
Bring it.
First, honestly, you gotta be honest on this. How many 360s have you had Red Ring on you?
0.
0. Do you have like a...
Including my launch box, which I've posted pictures of on Flickr, I have not had a problem. And I own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months.
Is that just because you're constantly switching between the files? Day at a time and letting it rest?
Maybe yes, unfortunately I haven't had a problem.
Well, that's impressive, I will admit.
So, given the success of the 360, is there someone at Microsoft that's responsible for stuffing money hats, or is that outsourced to India too?
I know it's still being done here. I wouldn't know because I don't have a money hat. I need to find one.
So, I mean, all kidding aside, you had to play D on that issue.
Actually, before we get into that, you cut the best part out, which is, do you know what happens next?
What was next?
I believe it was when, I was asking, we wanted to get you on the platform, we wanted to actually client on the Xbox 360 platform.
Okay.
And, you basically told us we had to write a check.
Oh, yeah. That was right after the check. Yeah, you said you didn't have a checkbook that big.
Exactly. That was lying. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So talk to me about playing D, because when something goes wrong, I mean, even little things, Xbox Live is down for an hour.
Yep.
Or big things, like, okay, we've got a new error that's cropped up on a batch of systems. You take the heat.
Yeah, it is, you kind of summed it up right. It's great when everything's all sunshine, but when it starts raining, you kind of just have to put your raincoat and go out there and suck it up and deal with it. I travel the world a lot, I talk to a lot of people, and, a lot of folks had some Red Ring of Death issues. We addressed it, and we've all moved past that, and, it was not our finest hour, and fortunately we fixed it. It frustrates me because I feel the frustration in listening to someone that they had a bad experience, or maybe they had a bad experience with support, and I truly want to help them. And it's in my nature to go, okay, let's find out what happened, and let me get to the bottom of this. And it's frustrating for me when someone has a problem, and I want to do whatever I can to help, because I really believe in the product of the Xbox 360. I'm still there. And I want to make sure we can do what we can do to help this person feel better. It bums me out when they have a bad experience with our platform. There's so many guys and girls that are behind me that are working to make the platform great. When somebody has a negative experience, I want to know about it, and I want to know what I can do to make it better.
So Jeff, you've recently joined, EA in a similar role. How are you negotiating that particular swamp?
Very unprofessionally. It is a tough line to find, between being perceived as independent and honest, and then perceived to be a shill and dishonest. And really, I've wavered back and forth over the line many times. I think successfully and unsuccessfully. The thing is here, in my case, I pitched this job and we created this job for me to do. And part of the deal is that I'm supposed to have a certain amount of independence. But, the company has very clear objectives and clear goals and clear needs. They have messages about their games that are important to get out and that they stick to. But that isn't always necessarily going to jive 100%, obviously, with being completely independently honest. So where that is something that I'm playing around with now. And I think if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, you've seen that, I've played with fire a little bit. So.
I don't know about you, Jeff, but I know that I've certainly got that phone call or that email from people.
Yeah.
And those, I can't speak for EA, but I can tell you, when you get an email from the Microsoft legal department about something, you're like, oh no. It's kind of unsettling, but it's part of, I used to work with Robert Scoble, who blogs a lot, and Robert and I would talk about this, and blogging, much like podcasting, is like working a gold mine. You're going to go in, and you're going to come out with mountains of gold to give to everyone, or you're going to come out with your feet and your legs blown off. It's going to be one or the other.
Right. I mean, I feel like I just want to give this a good college try. I mean, it's new ground, right? It's new ground for a company to have this kind of access. I mean, obviously Larry's been doing it for a long time. We're seeing Dan Amrich, Activision hired him to do it over there. So you see companies experimenting with this idea of having kind of an editorial voice. So I want to, try to push it as much as I can within reason, because I do feel that it can, in EA's case, that it can help sort of humanize the company. Obviously there's going to be certain things I can't say, and I wouldn't say. I know about games coming out that I can't talk about, and it would be idiotic for me to do that. But on the other hand, I'd like to be able to feel that if something is a problem, or there's issues with gamers, like there was stuff going on when Mass Effect 2 launched about people not being able to get their Cerberus codes and things like that. And I was able to engage folks on Twitter. It's really exactly what Larry's saying. And I did my best to personally interject when I could, when people were contacting me personally, saying, look, Jeff, I've been reading your magazine for years, help me out, get me my frickin' code. So in those cases, I actually tried, to really personally help that person. And I did succeed in pretty much every case. And I felt like it was important to establish this sort of, that you really can have a relationship with someone at EA, and it can be a good one, and if you complain, someone will hear you and help you out. I'm not going to be able to help every single person who ever has a problem with EA, but I can at least sort of represent that we're trying.
You should just be thankful you didn't get the calls about Windows Vista. I got those. Yes, they did.
I'm of the opinion that sometimes I think developers can go too far playing defense. I mean, sometimes the best thing to do is just to not speak. Can I get a show of hands? How many people remember the whole Dennis Dyack, 2 Human, taking down NeoGAF thing? Right? So this is one little clip of probably 12 hours of Dennis Dyack podcast talking about the 2 Human thing. And this is from, I think this was from one of yours.
2 Human is being judged on things that are not real, and I stand behind it, but I say to people, play it yourself, but in the end, we are the people that have the potential to influence and make change, so someone has to stand up and say, in my opinion, I've been told so many times, please don't post on the forums, because it's going to result in nothing any good, and I hope that this post results in something good, and that's why I did it, and that's the end of the story.
So do you think you can go too far? I mean, James, you haven't talked a little bit here. I mean, luckily I can't remember any giant Ratchet & Clank scandals, but hopefully not. Hopefully not. I mean, what kind of constraints do you put on your people, like going out and talking in other podcasts, or going and posting on forums, even if they're not trying to necessarily be
the rule at Insomniac is what would Ted do? And there's literally a poster of that, like Jesus Ted, like this is what would Ted do. And that was when the whole forums got introduced at Insomniac, and it was like, hey, we want you to post on the forums, but just think, what would Ted do? I also think sometimes when you defend something like that, to that point, you make it a bigger deal than it actually is. And the more you keep talking about it and trying to defend something, the more people are going to pick on it and come back at you. So a lot of times it's great to say, what's our statement on this? Where are we going to be on this? And then just come right out and say it and leave it at that. And, we've said things that have kind of gotten attention before. I think, I was on a Europress tour, and at the very end of like a 2-week grueling thing, I made some comments about Resistance 2 that kind of got carried off, and, that's kind of stuff happens, but at the same time, we always just try and be really honest and straightforward with our answers, and don't worry too much about people's reaction to that. We're always paying attention, but the more you kind of snowball yourself into it, the bigger the problem gets for you.
Right. I mean, Ken, you guys have made the decision lately to launch your own dedicated community site. which if you didn't know it was associated with a game design company would sort of seem like any other game site. I mean, people are talking about all sorts of stuff there. I mean, how do you deal with somebody, you know, from your staff who wants to post about this great